What is going on, everybody? This is Mr. Tony Stark with another edition of Stark Reviews. Today we're going to be taking a look at The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey, which just came out last Thursday night. It was Friday the 14th. And this is a movie that I've been waiting for about 10 years, ever since I was in high school and saw the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. I've been excited for them to make this film, this series, and it is going to be broken in half. If some of you, a lot of you probably are familiar with the Lord of the Rings, the story of the Lord of the Rings, and the whole book, the trilogy, and how it's all set up. A lot of you are familiar with that already, so I won't go into too much detail as far as how that is set up. But for those of you that are not familiar, the original trilogy of the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King were a trilogy of books that were written by J.R.R. Tolkien a long time ago, and The Hobbit, which is the movie that we're taking a look at today, was basically a prequel to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It had some of the same characters, and it ultimately leads up into the trilogy of the Lord of the Rings. Now, the Hobbit as a movie, if you have never seen the Lord of the Rings and you're not really into fantasy and not into the action fantasy kind of wizards and dwarves and elves and all that kind of good stuff, you probably won't like the series. If you've never watched it, you probably won't like The Hobbit either. However, if you have never seen the Lord of the Rings and you're interested in possibly getting started and watching them or reading the books or anything like that, The Hobbit is a great place to start if you haven't seen those up until now. You don't have to see the 3 Lord of the Rings movies to watch The Hobbit and enjoy it. It is a completely different storyline. It has its own set of characters, even though some of the characters will appear again in the trilogy of The Lord of the Rings, or did appear already, but the storyline is completely separate as far as that goes. The main character is a common character, someone that's not very extraordinary, and he's put into extraordinary situations, and that's the premise of the entire Lord of the Rings series. So, if you're into that kind of thing, if you're into the action, fantasy, wizards, and magic, and a lot cooler than Harry Potter, in my opinion. If you're into that, you definitely are going to enjoy The Hobbit. Now, as a movie itself, just taking it out of the whole fantasy genre and the fact that I'm a Lord of the Rings fanboy and have been since I was little, I would still rate this movie really high on the scale of directing, of visual effects, of sound, of acting, special effects. It's excellent. I highly recommend it. I went into it with high expectations, and I can say that I was completely satisfied to all of my expectations and all of my desires in a prequel to The Lord of the Rings, as epic as the trilogy was in the first place. The Hobbit lives up to that expectations without going overboard, without splitting into several storylines, and without being boring. Ultimately, that's the biggest thing for me, is that The Hobbit was almost 3 hours long, but I was captivated the whole time. Whereas when you're watching The Lord of the Rings, if some of you have seen it, like I said, I'm assuming that most of you have, it gets boring. There's a lot of walking, there's a lot of, cinematic screen panning, that kind of thing, a lot of dialogue. Now, even though this movie starts out like that, it starts out with a little dialogue, a little slow, it gets really action-packed towards the middle and into the end, so the 3 hours pretty much fly by. If you aren't into long movies, you might want to wait until it comes out so you can, rent it or buy it and, watch it, half at a time or something like that. So, with that being said, I give The Hobbit 5 out of 5 for the fact that it just blew me away in my expectations. Like I said, I had such high hopes for it, and it really lived up to all of that. The characters that they brought back that are in the trilogy and into this one, they balanced it out well. They told the story of the book without, going into way too much detail, because the book itself is super long, and if you've ever read it, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So the biggest question that I got from people that were asking me about it was, if I've never seen The Lord of the Rings, can I still see this and understand? And the answer is yes. There is only one basic plot line, and it has ultimately nothing really to do with the other Lord of the Rings movies until you watch this one, and then go watch those, and you'll completely understand where the characters are from and how everything ties together. I will say, however, that it does help if you have watched The Lord of the Rings. You'll notice characters, you'll notice certain things from the older ones. It's weird to say that from the older ones, even though that this is a prequel and those are after this, but you get the idea. Highly recommend it. If you have any questions or any thoughts on the movie, if you've already seen it, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. If you've liked the video, also feel free to click the like button and yeah, spread it around. I really want everyone to take a chance at this movie. If you've never seen Lord of the Rings at all, it's a great place to start. And if you're a Lord of the Rings fan like I was, I think you'll be highly pleased and not disappointed at all. This is Mr. Tony Stark, and I'll see you soon.